Your voice is the value. We grow because you show up. We rise as one, or we don't rise. Oh, I got to do this way. Or we don't rise at all by Dr. Gregory, Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr. I just had to flip my phone and it just became larger.
No, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And as you can see in this title slide, we have a beautiful woman who has the mic, and everyone else is waiting for her to recognize that she's not really just speaking for herself, but she's speaking as part of the community. At times, you're speaking as part of a team. When you start to recognize, even when you're in an entrepreneurial standpoint, if you're a true entrepreneur, you're not moving in a space where it's all about just you. Because if that's the case, then you're just creating a glorified job. But when you're moving in a space that you're creating a possibility or a landing space where others can be blessed by based upon your gifts, your talents, your services, what it is you may be offering as a product, then you start to recognize there's value in that. And it always starts with the voice. What is it that we're uttering? As we have learned and been expressed, everything starts from that logos. It starts in the word. What is it that you're declaring? And then after you declare it, you have the ability to manifest, and it starts to become an essential part of who you are becoming, especially as you're starting to move powerfully in your respective spaces and places in the marketplace. Okay, our next slide. If Miss Johnson could read that slide, I appreciate it.
Sure. Every voice is a thread in the collective weave. Collect the pattern. Each contribution completes the pattern of our shared wisdom. Repair connections. Silence creates gaps. Expression repairs connection. Depth of truth. Diversity of tone equals depth of truth in the tapestry.
And I'm going to start with the third thought, depth of truth, because there are times when someone can be like, "Hello, how you doing?" And people are like, "Whoa, whoa, you startled me." Or someone walks up and say, "Hello, how you doing?" Now, depending upon that, I said the exact same words, but depending upon my tone, could start to illustrate what type of venue I'm in, who am I interacting with, is it professional? Is it more intimate? Is it more in those spaces that my voice now or the articulation that I'm expressing with my voice is starting to tell a story? And sometimes we don't recognize that we are expressing the truth every time that we open up our mouth, our own respective truth. The truth doesn't mean it's a fact. And one of the things that we must recognize, that's why it's depth of truth. Just because something is true to you does not make it true to someone else. And in too many times, we can be either that we feel that we're putting ourselves in an impression upon others to have our particular voice instead of recognizing, wait a minute, I need you to have your voice because your voice is going to help me. I don't need you to be just an echo or a copy, but it's about you recognizing that depth of truth which you are generating may add value, and maybe that will help start to generate some new facts. And so we can see that sometimes when people get into disagreements and arguments, that perspective. And sometimes we can be even in the space that we can be minimizing each other. So, oh, that's not the truth because you said this. Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. Before we say that, are you looking from their lens or your own respective lens? Unless you have some facts that can ground what you're saying, we have to start to respect the fact of where people's truths are. And how do we complete the patterns? Every time that you allow individuals to add some level of value into your experience, into your life, that helps you to complete your respective pattern. And in some ways, you're helping them to complete their pattern as well. Because those contributions is exactly what it is. It doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be something where, you do this in order for me to have that. No, your words, your thoughts, your presence could be in a space where you're contributing. You're here. You're giving some level of attention. People don't understand. People think when you pay for something, it's about what you go drop in your when you reach into your wallet or into your purse, is no, the first thing that you always pay is attention. But sometimes we don't recognize that. And as we repair connections, we have to understand silence creates gaps, but silence also helps with the fact of inflection. And those expressions, even though you're repairing a connection, even though silence may be a part of it, your expression can help repair the connection. Because you may be silent, but as my wife tells me all the time, which I laugh all the time, there's many times my wife will hit me up on my cell phone and be like, fix your face, fix your face. And you start to recognize I laugh at that because it's so true. I may not be saying that one word out of my mouth, but if my face is moving in a particular way, I'm speaking. I'm articulating. It's like, wait a minute, Dr. Clarke, you're not saying any words. Yes, I am. I'm still speaking. Just because I didn't say a word or logos doesn't mean that I'm not speaking. Any thoughts before we move on to the next slide? Okay. Mm, okay, okay, let me let her in. Miss McIntyre, could you read this slide for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Grow because you show up. Presence as participation. Transformation happens through participation, not observation. Your voice brings energy, story, and solution. The circle expands with every authentic word spoken.
Thank you for that. And why is that so important as we welcome in Miss Danielle Gaskins into the room? Thank you for joining us. When you start to recognize that transformation only happens, it doesn't happen from a space of inertia. There has to be some sort of catalyst. In order for transformation to happen, it's not about just, okay, I'm here existing. Existing doesn't work. Now, you can exist, but exist just means that you're allowing yourself just to be like, okay, I'm just going to allow for things to come to me or to be established into how I'm going to move, and that's how I'm going to move. Well, technically, you're not really moving because basically it's based upon everyone else around you and what they're doing, how they're intimately moving, how they're intimately shaping, how they're intimately developing. And so when you move from the space of being an observer, as we've said plenty of times, are you on the court? And your presence has to mean that you're not just showing up to say, oh, I'm in the stands just to wave my hands when everyone says to wave your hands. But now that you're thinking and you're bringing your voice, which moves in thought number two, brings energy, story, and solution. You start to understand how your voice is impactful and powerful. And if you don't recognize that, then the first thing we have to do is go back into those areas where you may need some extra level of expression for you to recognize, are you really truly empowered? Because once you're empowered, that means you're starting to see transformation happen into your respective life. And so, Dr. Cheryl, I would love for you to share because I know every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m., you share with some diligent individuals who come with you and you keep working with them about developing their respective voice. What would you say to the start about, the participation angle of it in order for your voice to be developed?
Yes, so thank you. I do have that power call, and it's only 20 minutes, if that, where I come on. I think it is a space where, because I've created something called a voice recovery, and it's not about singing voice or things of that nature. It's about restoring and recovering the voice, possibly after some things that possibly has silenced you throughout your pathway of life. And certain things that we need and certain systems that we have to interrupt each day. Each day we go into a system, especially as brown and black people, we go into a system that sometimes we feel that we're not enough, that we have to code switch, we have to do some things that um that looks like we are not the person or person that made up for the job. So it's important for us to understand how to get the tools to begin to use our voice. So I show people how to tap into their inner self and how to be in participation, how to put their voice in the matter, how to be able to move with that traumatic experiences that may come up, and see how long that you're silent for, because this system wasn't created for us. But you can speak into the system to shift some things. What I am doing right now is needful. How do I know? It's because they asked me to go a little step further beyond the book. They said, make a curriculum around this so you could teach us. Got that. So you got to listen to your community and what your community needs. And are you willing to step up to shift the system? I'm complete.
Excellent. And I see that Mr. Dave Grinley has joined us in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And we're talking today about your voice has value. And our voice is always in a space where we're the one that's tuning our voice. We're tuning our voice either from a perspective of a growth possibility, or we're feeling that there's something that we can't either have or we don't think we deserve. And then at times we think that's minimizing your voice, but no, you're the one minimizing it. Sometimes that self-talk is the worst thing that we can ever do if it's not positive and it's not developing you to be, in a space where you are manifesting a possibility. If you're stuck just saying that this can't happen or that can't happen because they said. So we always got to go back to who's they? Who is that they? Your presence, did you show up to say, I'm here to participate. I'm here to be as powerful as I so choose to be. I'm going to be the best, and you can put whatever it is under that line or on top of that line to express yourself, to say that's what you're going to do. So any thoughts before we move on? Ms. Gaskin, since you are in the building, can you read this slide?
Yes. Um, Comeback is not recovery, it's rebirth. Recovery restores what was lost. Rebirth creates what's new. Restoration awakens dormant potential. The Comeback Collective is a womb of reinvention. Every yes to your voice resurrects dormant potential.
Thank you for that. And why is that so important? Because every single day we have to come back to ourselves. Every day that we have the ability to wake up and we still have this life that we respectively living in our own respective pathway gives us the opportunity. When you open up your eyes, it's a form of rebirth. It's not you're recovering from something. Sometimes we look at recovery like, I gotta recover. Today was a bad day, so I gotta recover the money or recover the revenue or recover. It says, no, no, no. Move into that next day knowing that, okay, that day is complete. This is what happened in that day. This is now you're entering a new day, and allow your energy to be in a space where you're developing that new day instead of always looking backwards and say, oh, I call it the Al Bundy syndrome. For those of you who may be old enough or remember the show Married with Children, Al Bundy always went through his life stuck in all the stuff he did in high school. There was no possibility of rebirth or growth in his life. Everything was based upon what he did on that football field 20 some odd years ago when he was still in high school. And now he's married with children and he's moving through life as if, he's disturbed by a bunch of things that keep happening around him. And so he's moving in a space where he's not even experiencing recovery, restores what was lost, because he's robbing himself. If you're looking at the Al Bundy character, he robs himself of the present. So he never has the opportunity to experience a rebirth, to create something new, because if the newness moves you towards the future. So if you're robbing your present, you can't even affect your future because you're really stuck in the past. And as we look at resurrection, where it awakens dormant potential, we wake up every single day with choices. We wake up every single day to have a possibility of understanding and recognizing how we can be impactful on what it is that we're choosing to do. So you have the ability. I love the fact when you hear about certain people who are highly successful and they say, well, they shifted their view in this, they may have changed their look at that, or they may have tried a new genre, or they open up another possibility, and people would be like, oh my God, why are they doing these things? And it says, wait a minute, that is actually a good thing. We're going to come to you, Dr. Cheryl. Why is that so important? Because if you're not willing to innovate for yourself, I didn't say for others, if you're not willing to put yourself in a space where innovation is happening or you're abreast of what's happening around you in the current. See, when we think about the current, we're talking about now. We're not talking about what happened yesterday, and you're not going to rob the now of what's going to happen tomorrow. But if we are powerful enough to be like, wait a minute, what am I doing at this particular moment to be powerful in all the potentialities that I have access to, that have possibility within? Then I can always take certain things to another level. And innovation or technology are just there to accentuate or to assist in what we do. It's just like you heard us talk about the assistance factor. If you are recognizing how there are so many assistants out there, but we didn't recognize that Siri and Alexa were those initial simple AIs. They were assistants. Oh, Siri, play this song. Oh, Google, do this or do that. And you're like, wait a minute, okay. I don't want to get into AI. We've been using AI for at least the past 15, 20 years. It's just this now that they made it more, they articulated it. Now people have a problem with it. But before I go any further, Dr. Cheryl, you had your hand up. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you referenced Al Bundy. I think Al Bundy's life is indicative of everyone else's life. They have normalized a dysfunction,
Mm,
I just feel like Al Bundy's life. That's why he was so relatable. He
mm,
was just walking in unawareness. When you're bringing, because you were aware, so I just think Al Bundy was more of his life. It's only like, I think it's like 7% of people actually come to self-awareness and self-actualization. It's not many people that actually live the life that they so desire to live. And I'm gonna just touch home. It's like I'm not gonna name her name, someone passed away, and my daughter said, she was here for a fun time, not a long time.
mm,
And I chuckled, and we were like, like,
mm,
why would you say that? Because she had a chance to to have a second chance at life and
mm,
still was doing the same things. So we have choices. And he chose to live that life. And sometimes we have normalized the dysfunction so much that we live the life that we shall choose. So I'm gonna take Dr. Clarke. His comeback story is that you could see from his pictures. There was a picture that came up 11 years ago on our timeline,
mm.
and he's much heavier. That was 11 years ago. He made a decision that I want to be here for a long time. So I think that it was awareness, and then what you're going to do with that awareness when it does happen. We all have one life. And the choices that we make is the choices that we make. And I'm complete.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Anyone else has any thoughts that they wish to interject into the conversation? Remember, we're having a dialogue, not a monologue. So if you have any thoughts about even this respective slide or even your own thought patterns or how you're moving in your respective life, the floor is open for you to add your thought into the conversation.
Prophet, Dr. Clark, it's Carol McIntyre.
Please, Miss McIntyre, please. Yes.
Yeah, I really love this slide and the comments um, that has gone forth. And if we were to be really honest, um, how many opportunities we have missed because of a bad experience.
Mm,
Um, you know, we have allowed the past to control the present and even the future. And I love the part where it says the rebirth, because every day we wake up, we get to redo it and redo it better. I think it was John Maxwell said we win some and we learn some. It's never losing, but
mm,
it's a learning. But as Dr. Cheryl says, we have choices, but sometimes we don't. We allow the past. We choose the past opposed to the present and the future to be better.
mm.
So it's really a conscious decision. But I just love the fact that every day we get up, we get a chance to do it and be better and better. So, and I'm complete.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Their respective thoughts as we get the opportunity to have some space of rebirth every day.
Yes, this Prophet Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
So you spoke about AI has been around between 15 to 20 years.
And
Has
like
it
in
become more
actuality,
affluent?
I wanna pause you for a second. Actually, AI has been around since the 1940s,
Wow.
but our real interactions with it from a consumer level, that means, people in their homes and things of that nature or our cell phones, has really been amping up over the past almost 15 years. And continue your thought.
So with that being said, it's become more affluent. Why have they made it more affluent to us as a people? I'm
Well,
complete.
you got to look at it this way. Most things that end up coming into the marketplace, it's been around for a while before it gets down to the end consumer. Governments, people who had supercomputers. If you look at the background of AI from the first time that the term artificial intelligence was first coined to the computing power that IBM, helped to stimulate in the 50s and the 60s and everything going forward. Just like the internet. The internet was around since I would say the late 70s, but it used to be an internet. That means only like certain governments had it, the United States government had it. There was a form where they had an apparatus where they were able to communicate. Before we started talking about, okay, I can have a computer in my home and I can type in some lines and I can go to this particular website. There was ways of communication. And so with anything, by the time it starts getting to a consumer level, you're going to still have certain individuals who will look at it as something that is not stimulative, which means they get scared of it. Most times, a new dispensation, the old dispensation, or the previous dispensation is going to fight against it. That's why you still hear certain people talk about, um, AI could be the devil, or AI is otherness. It must be, anti this and anti that, and that's not the truth. Because I can remember growing up in my own household being transparent when I was, as I'm starting to get into the Stranger Things show, that was the time frame when I was around that age, 10, 11, 12 years old. And I remember when I had the opportunity to have a Commodore 64. Yes, I'm dating myself. A Commodore 64. And my own mother Bless her West Indian heart. Thought that that was the devil. What is that thing that you brought in the house? Or what is that thing that you earned and that you desired? And what is this thing? What is this? And it's always based upon the fact that the previous dispensation, if they don't have any information, if they did not get access or the possibility in developing themselves in that particular technology, is going to look at it as otherness when it's not. So now that we are in a space where we're around certain conversations where we're propelling people to become aware, move into the space of competency, move into the space where every single day you can experience that rebirth. If you prompt it correctly, you're going to get tremendous results. And the people who may complain and say, well, this thing seems to don't work or it's off. No, it's not that it's off. It starts by you. It's an input-output situation. As that Commodore 64 was for me when I was 12 years old in the early 80s. And we must recognize that, especially as a community. And that's the reason why when I decided to do the rebranding about the comeback, because there's so many things, especially in our respective communities, that we don't usually have access to because we think it's just only for this or it's just only for that. It's like, who told you that lie? Who made that statement? What did you believe? Did you get yourself in the space of being technologically at least aware? I'm not talking about you running around and you doing codes and Python and stuff like that. I'm talking about, are you aware? And even Dr. Cheryl can allude to this. We were just on a cruise ship where we had to make sure someone had some level of access because just to be technologically just basic, not super aware, not a computer genius, not someone that knows Office back and forth. No, just to be in the space of from the space of just communication. And the sad thing about it is this person is not an outlier because there's probably plenty of people still in our respective community who move like this, who didn't allow themselves to become abreast of what was coming on in the current. And now it takes more work at times to be like, wait a minute, we need you to be with the group. But it's hard to be with the group when you haven't even allowed yourself participation. So hopefully that answered your question, Mr. Franklin. We have to get out of the spaces, even when we see something that's uncomfortable, our mind will automatically start to push against it. That's different. That doesn't feel like what I know. Okay, it must be something bad. Like, wait a minute. Sometimes, and I remember the young lady who used to be the CEO of Facebook when she wrote her book about leaning in, about women leaning in business. And that became a very definitive point about leaning in. And leaning in also works for us as men. Sometimes we try to lean out instead of recognize, no, lean into it. Oh, I don't know about this. Maybe I'm not supposed to do that. Who told you that? Find out about it. Get yourself aware. Get yourself exposed. Create that opportunity of rebirth on a daily basis. Where it's like, wait a minute, I didn't know about this. Okay, what was the processes that you allowed yourself to move towards that rebirth status that, wait a minute, I'm going to learn about this. I'm not going to learn about it in a day. It may take me more than a month. It may even take me 6 months. But wait a minute, each day that you learn that lesson, as Miss McIntyre added that value about John Maxwell's quote, you're not supposed to act, you actually don't lose. You're not supposed to lose. It's about learning lessons. Sometimes when you get in that space about being good or bad, I'm winning or losing. No, that's not necessarily how it's supposed to be rocking out. What lesson did you learn that's going to enhance your rebirth? And when you allow yourself to be in that space that you're rebirthing and rebirthing every single day, when we open up our eyes, we're experiencing a level of rebirth. Not in a full cognitive sense, but in an aspect where you're allowing yourself to say, wait a minute, I have the opportunity to learn something new today that you may not necessarily have known the previous day. And that's why at the bottom, when I have the Comeback Collective is a womb of reinvention, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself every single day. Sometimes we'd rather say no to something or push back or not or lean out. Because if I say that yes, that means I become responsible. That means I'm basically, and I don't like to use the word force, but you're more or less position yourself to say, wait a minute. Okay, now I got to push through to the end. Yeah, that's what you should do. Not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but you position yourself that you're rebirthing so you can manifest a possibility. Any other thoughts before we move on? We'll make sure everyone gets an opportunity to put their voice in the matter before we move on to the next slide.
I also put a question in the chat. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, no, ask the question, please. Share the question.
The question was for either Dr. Clarke. How
Mhm.
can you help someone to realize that they're in dysfunction if they don't see it? Not to fix them, but to get on a journey of discovery.
Well, from my aspect, I know Dr. Cheryl will have her own particular thought. So I'll go first, then Dr. Cheryl can come after me. For me, the first thing I would show an individual, especially if I'm coaching them or if they're in any of my respective programs, is about recognizing first, where are you at this particular moment? And the reason why I start there is that now we have to start to see, tell me how your life has unfolded to this point, because that's going to tell a definitive story. Even before I do any coaching, before I do anything that can be considered transformational work or anything like that, I have to start with the basis of knowing, giving you the opportunity to recognize who you are right now. Because sometimes we don't even recognize that for ourselves. And as Dr. Cheryl alluded to when we talked about Al Bundy, he was so stuck in the way he was moving that where we would think, yo, that's crazy to live like that. And certain people are like, yo, this is how I automatically live. No, I'm good with this. And then when you present a new dynamic, depending upon if the person is willing, it always starts with the person. If the person is willing to put in the work or to allow the synapses to deal with something different, would be the possibility to see if this person will definitely desire to grow or move on into something else. And going back to the person that was on the cruise ship with us, you can tell there, even though we have presented possibilities, sometimes it becomes a personal choice, and sometimes certain individuals just desire to be in their respective comfort zone. And you don't grow in the comfort zone. And with that, Dr. Cheryl, would you like to answer Ms. Johnson's question?
Yeah, I put my clinical hat on with this one. There's a part of what happens with people that they don't realize consciously they're in that space. So they have normalized some type of dysfunction, but what you can do is model for them, like modeling good boundaries, modeling good eating habits. But like the person that passed away, the people that was around her in her ecosystem enabled that. They brought her the things that she really shouldn't have. They did the things. So your whole community needs to support that. Like Dr. Clarke's way of drinking, he loves juice. Like he loves juice. He still drinks juice, but he drinks the juice that has zero sugar. So the point of the matter is that if you got people around you that can model and could take baby steps towards shifting what you're doing, it can work. And I'm complete.
Excellent. Did that answer your question, Ms. Johnson?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Anyone else before we move on to the next slide? The floor is open.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mr. Grinley.
I'm in an interesting space, and more than likely, I'm not alone. I'm in a space where I have an idea. And to grow the idea, to make the idea work, to explore the idea, I would need to share the idea, not just keep it in my head and, you know. Now, where I come up against a challenge is if I share the idea, there are so many people that tend to have a negative response. Either the idea is too big or it doesn't make sense. And the conclusion that I have come to is because it's my dream that this idea is all about, I have to realize that when folk are reluctant to participate, it's just them not understanding my dream. So the space I'm caught between is, do I put it out there with the possibility of being told why it can't be done, why I can't do it, why the idea is not good? Or do I still step out there and say, you know something, I have to share it, and any response is a good response as long as I'm not bottling it up in my head. If they're positive, they're positive. If they're negative, they're negative. But there's something that can be learned as opposed to saying, you know something, why am I going to share this thing if at the end of the day, most of the responses are not positive? Let's put it that way. I need some help with making the decision as to how I proceed. Do I share or don't I share?
Well, I would say the first point in the matter is if it's something that has to do with any intellectual property, it's always good to protect that property or to make sure that, you have your necessary copyrights if it's stuff that you know that you've worked on. You should always make sure that stuff is protected, or at least that you have the space where you're protecting your IP. And we're not talking about internet protocol, we're talking about your intellectual property. And there are times where you may be in a space where you're almost like in this, how should I say, status quo, or this like space of not knowing if I'm going left or right. Is based upon the fact of, okay, once that you know that you have certain things protected, or at least you have positioned yourself to say, okay, now I can share this because this stuff I've already had the copyright, my IP. When it comes to my IP, this is my IP based upon how you put it together, because that's where the intellectual property comes from. Because you can't copyright a theme, but information you can copyright. The theme of it you can, but the information, depending upon how you put it together, can be protected. So that regardless if you get 1,000 no's, who cares? Okay, you got 1,000 no's. All you need is one yes. And the other day I saw something. Steve Harvey was having a conversation. He said that he had the opportunity to hang out with Robert Smith. And usually Robert Smith, anytime Robert Smith meets with anyone, he only speaks for a half an hour. He only gives them a half an hour of his time. I'm talking about a multi-billionaire. If you're going to have a meeting with him, he's going to give you 30 minutes. Within those 30 minutes, his assistant knows to come in and be like, okay. And you'll look for the signal from Mr. Smith to say if he's going to give this person another 5 minutes or to, give them the wrap it up sign. It's like, okay, give them something, make sure they get where they need to go, comfortably, and I'm complete. And Steve Harvey was able to say by the time the assistant came in the first time, put up a signal to show that, oh, I'm giving them an extra 5 minutes. And then she came back in after the 5 minutes, and he had another signal to show that, oh no, like I'm enjoying this conversation. Because in this conversation, as much as successful as Steve Harvey is, he was talking to an individual who was able to recognize how did you become a multi-billionaire, especially in the space of technology, investment finance, and all these other things. Mr. Harvey was able to speak with Mr. Smith for 7 hours because Steve, who does some of his philanthropic work with young men and stuff like that, he has his camps and stuff like that. He's like, oh, I can only help 300 people. And he starts to recognize in that conversation what Robert Smith was actually doing with Harvey, who is a successful individual, was actually making him more successful. He says, why are you only thinking for 3,000? I mean, for 300. You should scale it up to 3,000. Everything was about scaling up. Oh, if your reach is 300,000 people, why are you not reaching 3 million? Everything was about scaling up and recognizing, as we've learned here, or learned in other conversations that we were privy to, the same energy that takes to buy a 2-story house or a 2-family home, you can end up buying a tenement. Same energy. Now, are you willing to go through that? Now we're looking at what is it within us? What is the process within us that we are either allowing ourselves to be rebirthed into that, or we're going to allow ourselves to say, it seems like a lot. But no billionaire gets 25 hours a day or 8 days in a week. We're all allowed at the same time. And so where it all go back to is, okay, if you have your stuff properly documented, because you know that this is something that you've created that you desire to put into the marketplace, regardless if it's something that you're teaching others or something that's supposed to add value to what your business is. It always starts with right there. What am I comfortable to do with this? Because it's not the marketplace that's necessarily keeping you away from, and those no's are there as gatekeepers actually to say, okay, do you desire this? Because it's easy to say, oh, this person I keep getting no after no after no. Okay. So you can have been the person who created 7-Up and stopped at the 6th time. Or as we saw that Colonel Sanders didn't become successful until he was 64. But everyone eats KFC, especially they love the Jamaican version of it. But you would say 64, why would you start something at 64? All these things are always barometers to say, what is it that we desire to rebirth? Or do we talk ourselves out of it because someone said no? That's where lies the rub. That's where, when Dr. Cheryl was just alluding to the fact that from a clinical sense, or for me, from an educational, transformational space, it's like, okay, first I'm going to ask you, okay, what is it that you desire to do and where are you at? Because that's going to tell the greatest story before we do anything going forward. We're going to deal with the current. Where your life is, what is it that you desire to do, and where you're at. Because now that's going to give an opportunity to recognize, okay, we can't talk about what you can do if you don't know what you're doing. And too many times we can hinder ourselves because We're looking so far into, okay, this, that, this. Whoa, 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 whoa. Even though I know you deal with elevators. Sometimes we got to be here on the basement level on the first floor. Let's get this thing right. So when you get up to that fifth floor, or that 15th floor, or that 25th floor, or maybe even that penthouse, oh, I can stay up here. I can make it into the space where, oh, no, no, I'm comfortable. I can be up here. Because you've allowed yourself all the necessary steps and possibilities to reach that possibility. I hope that was helpful.
Thanks, Doctor.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Words as creation, the sacred responsibility of speech. Spiritual act. Speaking is a spiritual act of making worlds. Just like just now, all these interactions that we're even having on this teaching, we're creating worlds. It's not just one world. You can't be that narcissistic to think that, okay, I'm just creating one world by the conversations that you're having other people to interject in and to be a part of. That means my interaction with Nicole means that, okay, I'm creating a Greg world and a Nicole world based upon our interaction. Because she's getting something from me and I'm getting something from her. Those are two worlds right there. When Dr. Cheryl speaks and she's interacting with even me as her husband, those are two worlds, even though we've combined and allow ourselves to commingle and collaborate and cohabitate a space. But it'd be disrespectful to say, oh, my wife should just think just like how I think. No. Number one, that wouldn't work. And number two, that means I'm minimizing the fact that, wait a minute, she may have a different perspective. Even tonight, to be transparent, initially, we were going back and forth. She's like, oh, maybe she could do it this time. I said, I'm feeling doing it at this particular time. But I'm noting, I even respectfully say, I duly noted. I respect the fact of your opinion. But ultimately, you still have to make a choice. The same way that there may be times that I may suggest something and she'll say, oh, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to get upset with her because she made a choice. And sometimes we do that. We get disturbed by people having choices, not recognizing that they're creating or shaping the world that they're choosing to move through, which moves to the next one. We shape in energy. Language shapes energy and atmosphere. And I did that example earlier. The inflection of your voice, your nonverbal cues, all of those different things shapes energy. Remember, energy doesn't die. Energy just gets transformed. And we see that with water. Up here right now where we're living at, there's still snow on the ground. That's a form of water vapor. But eventually when the sun hits it and the temperatures start getting a little warmer, all of a sudden that water vapor will go back into the atmosphere. And some of it will go into the ground. But that energy didn't disappear. It went someplace else. It's still around. It's just got transformed. And as we can rise together, and that's why being in community is so important. When we speak from truth, the collective rises together. Because even as we're creating these sub-worlds into one major conglomerate world of collaboration, there's a truth that's being shaped, not necessarily facts. There's a truth that's being shaped. See, the truth is, like, as Mr. Grinley alluded to, there are people that have said no who may not recognize or understand what some of the choices he has made. And that's good. Because those are not the individuals he's called to. Or called to for that idea. Just like there's certain things that my wife is called to that I'm not called to. That doesn't make the fact that, okay, since Gregory is not called to that, that means Cheryl is not called to that. No, that doesn't make any sense. That's such a space of minimization. That means when a person is attempting to create something, we're limiting them based upon our own ideology. My ideological view is this, and so if it doesn't match my ideological view, it shouldn't happen. That doesn't work. Or if you feel that that works, that's why stuff becomes very limited, very finite. So our words have power. And that's why, as a subheading for this particular slide, the sacred responsibility of speech. Every single moment you choose in your day, and you are shaping how your world is coming up, regardless if it's your home environment, regardless if it's your work environment, is regardless of how you're interacting with potential clients, if you're an entrepreneur, regardless if you're interacting with people as co-workers or your boss, if you're in a corporate job. You are creating those interactions. Then people who have the power to have some sort of, how shall I say, it goes beyond competency, but when they have the ability to be able to elaborate, those are the ones that have some level of leadership potential. Because it's not about just cooking the thing or that. After a while, it goes beyond that. That's the very minute part of it. There's a difference when Mrs. Fields was just baking cookies in her house to the point when she finally sold the company, it was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a different difference. Now, the cookies may have been somewhat tasting the same from when she was just baking in her home to when she finally sold the company and went corporate. Her creation created a world. She allowed that world to evolve and went from point A to where it ultimately went to. And we all have the power to do the exact same thing. That's why being in the community is so important. And one thing I always have to give my wife credit for, she helped me to get myself out of my own head. Because you can get stuck being in your own head. Dr. Cheryl, can you read this slide for us, please? Doo-doo-doo-doo. See, she's probably fixing her screen.
Yes, I am. We, we rise as one, or we don't rise at all. Amplification. Each voice amplifies the next. Collective harmony. The health of the circle is heard in its harmony. Does that what is that?
Resonance.
Resonance of in diversity. Unity is not uniformity. It's resonance in diversity.
Thank you for that. And the reason why I start with resonance and diversity is that too many times what can limit us is that you're looking for someone just to do it exactly what's in your head. That doesn't necessarily work. Because even Henry Ford recognized that, which he became one of the bona fide first billionaires along with the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the Mellons of the world and the JP Morgans. If Henry Ford would have just stuck with what was in his head, the assembly line would have never came to fruition, which not only transformed what he did, but that transformed manufacturing globally. Because then everyone started to tweak that idea, not the theme or doing exactly like how he did it. And everyone started saying, no, no, what if we do it this way? What if we stretch out and figure it out that way? And it wasn't uniform. That's why, like for me, Outkast to me is one of the best artist groups of all time because you would look at one of the members as, straight lace and look like how we dress as urban, and the other one was always dressed in a way where he stood out. Even in the group, they wasn't uniform. It wasn't like, okay, we're wearing, just no. He had his own style. He had his own expression. He knew who he was. He was diverse enough within himself that added to his value because he didn't look the same. And too many times we attempt to look the same. Okay, because these people are doing it just like this, we're going to do it like that. No, who told you that? Who told you that? You were given these gifts and talents to be the same or to do it in this particular way? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. That's why at the beginning, we rise as one or we don't rise at all. And see, the reason why we rise as one, because then when you have a bunch of people, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a bunch of people who are helping you with your goal, it's not just your goal. Now you have a crew of people, or you have employees, or you have executives, or you have investors who are saying, wait a minute, we see what you're doing. We desire to be a part of this. So here's some money so we can get a chunk of your business. Because if you keep doing what you're doing, not only is my money going to work and grow, but you're going to end up growing. So even when you may pump yourself up and say, oh, this is my business, really? That means you're limiting yourself to be power of one. But now when we're moving in a space of rising together with others in community, and we all have communities. If you're an entrepreneur, you better be building a community. Not just something just to say, oh, I'm an owner of this business. Oh, that's great. Where's your community? How do you interact with your customers? Last week we dealt with networking and net weaving. Big difference. Which leads to the amplification. Each voice amplifies the next. Jeff Bezos started in 1999 in a little 10 by 12, barely, you can call it an office, still after he quit his job from Wall Street, to do some crazy thing off of this new thing called the internet to sell books. Now, Jeff Bezos is what? The third or fourth richest man on the whole planet? Now, we can look at that picture and say, oh, this is Jeff Bezos, Amazon.com, Jeff Bezos. Okay, that's good if you want to be just a sole proprietor. But after a while, if I'm selling these books, who's going to ship them? I'm not shipping them. Who's cataloging them? Where's the warehouse space? All these things like, well, okay, wait a minute, I need some help. Yeah, maybe my idea, but it's not meant to just for me to be mine. And as we can see, there's plenty of, not too far from where me and Dr. Cheryl live at, there's a Amazon warehouse distribution space and all that other stuff. Their stuff is all over the country. So they can keep their word on regardless of what it is that they're putting into the marketplace. They amplified their voice. What are you doing to present yourself so you can see amplification happen? Going back to when Steve Harvey had the conversation with Robert Smith, how are you scaling your business? Do you want to stay small and say, oh, okay, I'm going to have the same people and there's no investment of reaching out to people to say, wait a minute, there's other people out there who may desire to be a part of this. But no, I'm going to stay in my little cubbyhole. You're not allowing it to be expressed. You're not allowing it to be amplified. And collective harmony, as we have these conversations here about this weekly, because everything is based on repetition. That's the educational aspect of it. By recognizing that you are empowered because we're having these conversations, allows for a new level of opportunity to happen. Nicole, can you read this slide for us, please?
Sure. Your expression creates momentum. Social gravity. Authentic sharing becomes social gravity. Permission to heal. Your story gives permission for others to heal. Collective awakening. Together we move from conversation to collective awakening.
And that's where we're building those subworlds into all those possible worlds that we all can manifest through. See, social gravity, when you're authentic with yourself, and that's where if you see Dr. Cheryl from a clinical sense, or if you see me from a coaching transformational space, it always starts from the fact of, okay, tell me who you are now. Don't tell me what you think I should hear. Because not only are you lying to me, but you're really lying to yourself. And that's the worst person to lie to. That's why that self-talk is so powerful. Because someone could be in a space where Dr. Cheryl can be creating a solution-focused possibility for them, but they've not given her all the parameters to really for them to help. So it's not that Dr. Cheryl is not doing what she's supposed to do from a therapeutic sense. You hindered yourself. But it's easier to always point a finger outside of yourself to be like, well, that person didn't help me. Really? You mean you didn't help you? And it was easy to blame someone else outside of you because you can't take responsibility for it. So even in social settings or sociality, we have to recognize, are we being authentic with ourselves? Because without that authenticity, regardless of whatever you're doing outside of yourself, you're always going to wonder, why do I keep bumping my head? Did you tell the truth to yourself? Or you keep saying what you think people would like to hear? Because see, when you're authentic with yourself, that gives yourself permission to heal. See, I had to heal from how I was doing a detriment to my body, not my wife doing a detriment to my body, what Gregory was doing to his body in regards to the fact of how diabetes and, having to take PSAs and they was checking my prostate, all this stuff in my late 30s going into my early 40s because I was making the inappropriate choices. See, I can be authentic with that because not only is it part of my story, but that becomes part of my healing. Like, wait a minute, I plan on being here for a good little while. I don't, and just like as I deal with my elders and people who are maybe older than me in age, I don't deal with anyone who's old. I don't look at anything as old because you're only as old as you feel, which moves to the collective awakening. These conversations are not only beneficial for you, it's beneficial for me. Because together we can make those moves from just saying, oh, we're just articulating and doing some phonemic words out of our mouth. And to recognize, like, wait a minute, I heard something that forced me to think. Great, that means you're becoming awakened. Or I heard something that someone said, wow, that was a good thought by that person. Hmm. You that's helping me to become empowered and become aware and become more knowing. So remember your expression, your. There's not a space right now where I'm dealing with our. Your expression can create the momentum for what it is that you desire in your respective path. It's not meant to be easy. You have to put in the work. And you're not willing to do that, then you're willing just to exist, which means you're making that definitive choice in regards to your respective path. When we speak to rise, what truth in you is waiting to be spoken? That's a question that you have to ask yourself and answer for yourself. If you truly desire for growth to happen. And the funny thing about it is all successful people have this already within them. And we all have the ability to be successful. Now we have to move into space. Are we choosing to put in the work to get there? Or are we going to let age, we're going to let skin color, we're going to let ethnicity, we're going to let gender, we're going to let what this person may say, what that person may say, all this stuff, all that noise to keep you from where you can get to. How does your own voice contribute to our collective rebirth? Why is that so important? Because if you don't feel that your voice matters, that's when people say, oh, I ain't got nothing to say. You feel your voice doesn't matter. You feel your thoughts don't matter. Oh, they're not going to listen to me anyway, so I'll just be quiet. Okay? So you keep minimizing yourself from elevating because you're choosing not to speak. What will you say today that helps us rise as one? See, for me, by you being a part of the Comeback Collective Circle, your success to me is my success. Your empowerment and your expansion in your business or expansion in education or expansion in the possibilities where you're starting to see some level of growth, I celebrate it. The same way I would hope that if stuff is successful for myself or even me and Dr. Cheryl together and some of the things that we do, look, when you're willing to celebrate others, then you can be celebrated. When you're willing to give, you can receive. Oh yeah, somebody in the collective, they about to graduate or they did this and did that. No, let's celebrate that. But they got distinction, they learn how to code, we celebrate that. Or they got a degree, we celebrate that. That's why when so she may not be here, but like with Dr. Darnetta Franklin, every time we see her now, we utter that fact. We celebrate that fact. That's earned. Doctor. Means you put in the time. You put in the necessary effort to get there. You deserve that distinction to be expressed from a sociality standpoint. And that enhances the community. And finally, my voice is value. My presence is power. And our words build worlds. I'll say that again. Our words build worlds. And with that, I am complete. Dr. Shaw, you have any thoughts as we start to bring this to a close?
Yeah, it sounds like we're teaching the same thing these days. Are you on my computer?
No, I'm not. Oh,
I feel like our things is making a oneness. We're one. So a lot of times I speak on the power of your voice, um, that your voice is necessary. But I don't think that we all feel like how to speak is what we need to begin to look at. And do you have something to say? And this whole teaching today is my foundation of Speak Your Power Now. And understanding what that looks like. And I think that why this organically came out is it's necessary for you to do anything with the comeback conversations. It starts with you acknowledging that you have a story. It starts with you acknowledging that you have something to say. And how do you come back with that is giving it voice. So I'm complete with that.
excellent, excellent. Any other thoughts from anyone before we start to bring this thing to the close? And, you know, to me, this was a great conversation tonight. We're building effectively in conversation, and that's what it's ultimately about. And so with that being said, we have the opportunity to support the platform here at the Comeback Collective Circle. Ways to support, you can do it via Cash App if you so choose, at $ Gregory Clarke DMin, or if you decide to do it via Venmo, same thing, Gregory Clarke DMin without the $. And of course, if you choose to do it via Zelle or PayPal, you can do it to our email address, which is esquire971@gmail.com. So with that being said, continue to be powerful, continue to express your voice, continue to recognize its value and how valuable you are, not only here, but in the respective other communities that you interact with. And I can't wait to see you again next week as we're moving more diligently through this Advent season. Have a great evening and see you all next week.
Yeah, good night to all.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night, family.
Good night.